Okay.
Hi, Judy.
Hi, Paul. How are you doing?
Good.
Hi,
How are
Abby.
you?
Good.
So, guys, tonight I'm going to look at the writings of Jean Klein. And I'm reading from a book called Be Who You Are by Jean Klein. And he's having this meeting, and so he announces to the meeting, during these meetings, we shall discuss the knowledge of our true nature. This activity implies the absence of any preconceived idea. We do not strive to reach an imaginable goal because the unknown can be neither imagined or conceived, right? So when he's talking about our true nature, that's not known to us. So he's saying it can't be imagined, nor can it be conceived. Here we shall be concerned with a formless absolute, an ultimate subject, which can never be an object to be apprehended by the mind. Such research obviously implies that it be undertaken empty-handed by a mind which has rejected the strategy of functioning with the already known. So most of the time, almost all the time, our minds usually function with what's already known. Now he's introducing what is not, what is unknown. So the projection of a God, a self, a where, a when, are part of such a strategy and must be entirely laid aside. So any concept we may have about a God or an absolute or a Brahman or a nirvana, any concept, he's saying, lay it aside. The only technique, if I may say so, which we can use is based on an art of listening, which is the supreme teaching of the traditional method. What is important is for you to take up a passively active attitude, a passively active attitude. You should therefore listen with intense awareness and, moreover, strive to listen to yourself at the same time. So we listen to what he's saying, but at the same time, we listen to what's going on inside of us, our reactions and our responses to what he's saying. So it's more of a holistic listening. Mm-hmm. It's not just one-sided. It's listening to what he has to say, but having a very sharp awareness of what's going on inside of us at the same time. The ordinary man's activity is made up of reactions, which are the expression of his egotistic makeup. He is a self surrounded by pleasant or unpleasant, friendly or hostile objects, and everything which impinges on him incites him to react according to his desires and his fears. Because, and his fears consequently, all his reactions are false, fragmentary, inadequate, because they are rooted in his egotistic outlook, which is born of his delusion that he's a separate self. So very clearly he's saying it's so hard for us to really be able to receive or to have a full awareness when someone's teaching. Because what's happening inside is we are reacting we're not just passively taking it in, we're reacting to what is being said. And that reaction comes from that me with all its fears and all its desires. But this happens in every relationship, whether it's with a friend or a life partner or a lover or a parent, a child. We tend not to really listen because there's always a part of us that's immediately jumping in, even though we may not say something, but most of the time we say something, that's immediately jumping in with our own self-centered, self-absorbed reactions based on fear and desire. So, he goes on. Oh, let me just say, it may happen, though, that even the egotistic man, under certain circumstances, responds to the challenge of outside objects in such a spontaneous and adequate manner. It does happen at times when he comes face to face with something absolutely new, with something which it is impossible for him to integrate into his egotistical mental framework. It may also happen in the course of a poetical or aesthetic experience, because a thing of beauty, being an expression of harmony, possesses of its own nature a harmonizing power which, placing us temporarily in a state of perfect balance, allows us to be in tune with reality. But they are few and evanescent. What is this word? This is not effervescent. Well, they're few and far between these states of grace. So he's saying sometimes it happens that for a moment we are able to be in a silent listening when we come across or come upon something that has such beauty in it, such harmony, that the mind is totally silent. Or if we come upon something new, so there's no frame of reference in our mind, and so we say, oh, that reminds me of such and such. So we come upon something new, and in those moments, we're able to truly take it in without any reference to this me. So this state of listening is the first true step on the path. Next, we must undertake the observation of our desires so as to understand what it is that we are really seeking in all the objects which seem to please our appetites. We shall then realize that when the desired object is stripped of all its peculiarities, its distinctive characteristics, there remains a constant residue, which is the true object of our search, and which may be called fullness, bliss, and peace. Now, it so happens that nothing in the world of objects possesses perfect fullness nor unconditional bliss. After the conquest of a desired object, we experience a few short moments of non-desire, no desire. But very soon desire reappears and we embark on a new search. This clearly indicates that what we really desire is not the object, because if it were, its possession would eliminate all desire. What is desired is bliss, ananda, which exists at all times in myself and in everything. The realization of the presence of this bliss was lost to me when I became a separate ego, thereby losing sight of my essential identity with it. From that moment on, the world of objects and duality was born. This duality makes it impossible for us to perceive the presence of this bliss, which abides in ourselves as in all things. Okay, so obviously what he's saying here, we are constantly seeking happiness. We are constantly seeking pleasure. And we are so conditioned to believe that that can only satisfy us through an object. Whether that object is a person, whether that object is a thing, we feel that outside of us, if we can get that desired object, we will finally be satisfied. And indeed, for a few moments or a few days or even a few years, that's true. And the desire leaves us and we just feel just happy because we have this object in our life. But he's saying it doesn't last because it's not outside of us, it's inside of us. So the idea is to be able to tap it, to touch it, to feel it, to taste it inside of us. Now, he said, yeah.
No, I was just, there was a sentence that you read in the middle of that that just really blew me away, that like when we get the object of our desire, that we have these moments of peace and happiness, but it's really a state of non-desire for a little while.
Right.
Until the next desire. But the non-desire is the, the
Bliss.
feeling of peace and bliss.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
That's
So
right.
the thing that's making us unhappy all the time is like having desires for something or something to go away. And
That's right.
so we can live in non-desire.
That's right. That's right. Because that's what we fundamentally want. Because
Right.
in those moments of non-desire, there's peace. Because remember, the me is desire.
Mm-hmm.
The me is not separate from desire. It is desire. So when we're free of the desire, we're free of that me for those moments. And there's peace.
But it's also difficult for me to really get that whole thing of desire. That's a setup for the suffering that I've experienced. That desire eventually has to lead to pain, because at some point that desire is going to have the pleasure that it's seeking satisfied, but at some point it comes to an end, and then I want more, and that's when, in the small capsule, that's when the suffering begins.
That's right.
And as from a personal experience, I can identify what you're talking about with boats. I don't know how many boats I've owned and sold, like 30, 40, I don't know. But every boat that I bought, that was going to be the end all. That was going to this, that, and the other thing. And sometimes it would even last for about a year or two. All the time seeking something else.
Yes.
And boy, it's absolutely crystal clear. You get it, there's an elation, but I compare it to like a tremendous chocolate ice cream soda. It's delicious while you're eating it, but it doesn't last that long. You got to keep having more.
That's
right.
right.
And then you start to feel ill.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you start to feel guilty about wanting more. because you're conditioned to feel guilty that you want more. The whole thing is that
Right.
what this gives me, it gives me an opportunity to see how my ego, my center is working. That's the thing that I really get out of all of this.
That's right.
Anyhow.
Go ahead. No, go ahead, Ugo.
No, that's it.
Yeah, well, that's what this is about. See, I think the most important thing is to be able to see when this me is working and pull the plug on it. And then it comes up again and we pull the plug again.
Whatever you're thinking, it's working.
But there's different kinds of desire.
Mm.
Let me do a flip side to the desire that's wanting to have more boats. I have a desire that my brother, who's quite ill right now, gets better.
Mm.
And suffering because he's ill, and I want to do something to make him better. And I realize that centering myself and it is not my control to make him better. And my suffering over his illness doesn't help anything.
Right.
So I've been trying to focus on that desire and letting go of it and just being there for him.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of being frustrated. What are the doctors doing? Why isn't this working? How can I do this? What can I do? I'm frustrated, and it doesn't do any good for him, and it doesn't do any good for me. It's a different type of desire. It's not wanting something for myself.
Yes.
But still, that desire has to be released in order to just accept what is coming with his illness and be there for him through it and let go of that. It's a different kind of desire, but you still need to, it's still my ego,
Right.
that's wanting this different scenario than what is.
That's right. An excellent point. Excellent point. That's right.
And we've been conditioned to do that. I mean, it's almost like if you don't act that way, you don't really love your brother.
Right.
You don't really love that person.
And
You've got to worry. You've got to try. You've got to fight. You've got to do all of this. We've been taught to react that way in that circumstance. And I think that's where understanding what that me and that center and that ego is all about helps. You know that this is not really you. It's something that you've developed since you were a little girl. You developed an ego. You've been taught how to be. Moment by moment, you've been taught how to be. So, here you are with all these years of conditioning. You're in a situation and you're behaving exactly the way your environment has taught you to behave. But what Klein is talking about, there's another way of being. There's another way of looking at it.
That's right. That's
So,
right. And when you're able to, as Terry said, put away that desire to just, I have to control the situation in some way. When you're able to put that away, it releases a lot of energy.
Yep.
And then you have the energy to be present with your brother, and even to be present with the doctors, and even to be present with the situation, so you have more clarity.
Mm-hmm.
And you're better able to handle the situation.
Yeah.
And even be present with yourself. With
Oh, yes.
the feelings you're having.
That's
But
right.
it's true. Like accepting one's own or somebody else's suffering is really challenging, because that you really want to go away. And that's just more suffering. It's like, oh, something's wrong. Make it go away.
Yes. So, but
there's another realization too here that I have to work on, and that realization is, why do I think, or why do I want to control? I want to control the situation, and that's part of that ego structure.
Yeah.
That comes from there, and that really helps me to let go of this, omnipotence that I think I'm not omnipotent. I'm and for me anyhow, when I get myself into situations like that, if I can catch myself thinking about it, it helps to know that it's that ego, it's that damn thing that I think I am that I'm not, that's causing me all these problems.
Well, yes, because when there is psychological suffering, that's the point where we want to investigate. See, that we don't really want to run. There is a part of us, of course, that wants to run away, and we do that through many activities of escape. But if we said we don't want to run away, we really want to look at what this psychological suffering is about, what's in it. If we're able to have the strength and the courage to stay with it and see what's in this, we begin to see the thoughts that are feeding this. And we can begin to put a pin in that and not dwell and not just go with it. Because the natural condition, and I think Jean will be talking about this, our true nature, or he already mentioned it, is one of happiness, is one of peace. That's our true nature. But Ugo, as you say, we are conditioned out of it. We're conditioned into suffering.
And we're also conditioned to try and figure it out, which is part of the control, like figure it out. Like, and there's so much like very often we don't know why we or other people get sick or are sick or can't seem to find a cure.
Right.
We ask the wrong questions.
Yeah, we should be investigating our mind, not the.
That's right.
There also seems to be a quality of lack that we feel from moment to moment, like something is lacking. And when I come across this in my own experience, I sit down, try to, when I can remember, and ask myself, Bill, what is lacking in this moment? And the only thing lacking is that I want it to be different. I want this moment to be different than what it is. Other than that, the moment right now is perfect as it is.
That's right. Well, Bill, that's about accepting the what is and really having the clarity to see the what is and not trying to escape from it.
Yeah.
Whether it's pleasurable or painful, to really have the clarity to see the what is and move from there.
Yep.
And a realization that part of that clarity that you're talking about, it's realizing that when you're seeing it through the observer, it's distorted, it's conditioned. And that's work for me all the time. I'm constantly forgetting that, and wait a minute, okay, that guy almost hit me. I want to go out there and rip his head off. Well, that's a conditioned response, and and so on and so forth. That's for me. That's a kingpin.
Right. Okay, so Jean goes on.
Which I think it
I'm sorry. Did somebody want to say something? Okay. It may happen in certain cases.
Yeah, but I don't think.
Okay, I'll continue. I don't know. I think somebody is trying to say something.
Yeah, Bill R is trying to.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay. I'm sorry. Bill R., did you want to say something?
I'm
Hi?
getting. Can you hear?
No,
I think he's cutting in and out a bit.
He may need to turn off his video and then only have bandwidth to talk with his voice. So if he can turn off his video, we will be able to hear him.
Bill, did you hear that?
Yeah, I can hear you guys.
Okay, now we can hear you.
All
Can
right.
you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Now we can.
Wonderful.
Oops.
Thank
No,
you.
now we can.
I'd like to.
You're going in and out, Bill.
Cutting in and out.
Situation
Why
from
don't
the
you
point
chat
of
it?
view that there must be, okay.
You're cutting in and out, Bill.
Uh, I'll start the video again. Okay, I'm going.
All right.
I'm just hearing. So I will leave.
Yeah, maybe leave and come back. It might be better.
I'll try.
Okay. So in the meantime, I'll continue with this. It may happen in certain cases that we find ourselves face to face with an object which is in exceptional harmony with us. We may then transcend pleasure and experience joy and discover that perfect joy lies beyond the pleasure-pain duality and is of another nature. When we are immersed in perfect joy, we cease to be ourselves, and only joy remains, and the object has disappeared with the subject. So there's no longer a duality of me and the other. There's just the joy that one has become in touch with in this relationship with the object. The object is no longer, and the subject, the me, is no longer. When we observe something attentively, consciousness penetrates vision, and we are nothing else but vision. When we really listen to something, we are nothing else but hearing. Before understanding any profound search, one must be able to look into oneself. One must not, however, analyze oneself, compare or judge, but one must observe oneself as one would any object. If one attentively observes the inner welling up, one is thereby absolutely and adequately situated, and there is no conflict. Discipline is of no use whatsoever, since things are naturally eliminated by discernment without it being necessary for us to treat them brutally with discipline. Even in the course of the technique known as letting go, a faint shadow of discipline is implied, for letting go of an object implies a certain discipline. Only an effortless and choiceless, I repeat, choiceless reaction is the hallmark of liberation. What is absolutely necessary is attention without strain. Then somebody says, and choiceless, and he repeats, yes, choiceless. And then somebody says, and without an end result. And Jean said, what end result could you possibly arrive at, since the object of your search is unknown? All you can say is this. Now remember, when he's talking about the object of your search, he's talking about your search for the absolute or your search for God. He says, how can you expect a result? You don't even know what it is. All you can say is, when I observe myself, I am really forced to admit that every day I am the prisoner of 1,000 unsatisfied desires, or desires whose satisfaction brings me no permanent bliss. So it seems to me that instead of endlessly running from one desire to another, it would be better to stop and examine the true nature of desire. If this investigation is successful, you will penetrate the nature of the true aim of all desire. What any desire really aims at is a state of non-desire. This non-desire is a state in which we demand absolutely nothing. Thus, it is a state of extreme abundance, of fullness. This fullness is revealed as being bliss and peace. You now know that you are really seeking nothing else but fullness and absolute peace. Now that you have understood that the inner nature of your ultimate goal, you perceive that the ultimate goal is in fact not a goal, that is to say, an end toward which you strive, but that the ultimate state can only be the consequence of relaxing and letting go. Liberation is not to be obtained by collecting and accumulating. By collecting and accumulating. By collecting and accumulating objects, whether it's the objects of knowledge, whatever the objects may be.
Well, I think it's important to point out, as Bill was saying earlier, the sense of lack is so pervasive, so that I may be also constantly in search of not only cars, boats, and planes, but constantly in search of approval or recognition.
Yes.
Right.
So that's the form of desire.
Right.
So, right? So
if I see myself as inadequate, as lacking, as not good enough, then I desperately want approval. And to get that approval, I'll do anything.
that's
Sometimes in a misguided effort to get approval, I'm superior and judgmental, or I'm obsequious and clinging and dependent, or envious and jealous.
right. Right. Or
So it's not-
subservient.
Or subservient, yeah. It's not only that we operate from this center, this me, that me that from which we operate is full of holes and doubts and inadequacies, feeling less than.
I am not worthy.
Or not
Yeah,
worthy.
not worthy, not good enough.
I had that little thing printed for years. I had that little sign over a desk that I had in the house. That was to remind me. It's when I was back in the days when I was reading Karen Horney. That's the state of, I kind of think in a sense, the boats and the objects were a way of sublimating that lack of self-worth. And like, like your mommy, when you hurt yourself, they'll give you a candy to make you feel a little bit better, something sweet. So it was, you go and you buy something, it's supposed to sublimate that hole or that loneliness that you're talking about, that Billy was talking about. I really identify with that. I mean, that's.
Right. Well, that's an excellent point, Paul, because it's, so the desire may not only be for an object like a boat or a house or a car or another person. It might indeed be getting that approval, as Paul just said. Right. So somebody says to him, might inspiration not be an approach to the path of which you speak? And Jean said, I said a few moments ago that objects have no other significance than to point toward consciousness. But there are, of course, certain privileged objects which direct us toward the non-dual experience. Works of art are foremost amongst them. When a work of art, whose very nature is to allow itself to be forgotten, causes an inner resonance, the personality disappears, the ego vanishes, and one becomes for one moment the very expression of unity. No, I thought that was quite beautiful, you know, the work of art. When you think of a rose, you refer to your perception of it and also to your personal way of conceiving it. You know that such and such a rose has such and such a scent, and its petals are soft to the touch, that it belongs to such and such a botanical species, that it can be made use of in such and such a way. All this is part of the knowledge accumulated by yourself and by men in general, and you superimpose all this on the impression of the rose when you say, I see a rose. But the real being of the rose, you never see. If you wish to know the rose, it is enough to be yourself. Because our essence and the essence of the rose are the same, since in reality, only one essence exists. When you are established in your essence, you communicate with the essence of every separate thing. When you are established in your essence, but we can only be established in our essence when we're free of this me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That doesn't mean that the essence isn't there. It's there all the time. But to be established in it, we've got to free ourselves from this dark cloud, this veil, this belief in a separate self that isn't even real. That feels real, but when you look at it and you ask, what's in this me? What is it made up of? What's in it? What's in it? It's a lot of thoughts, memories that generate feelings and that cause a lot of reactions. It's made up of all our fears and all our desires. So to free ourselves from this me establishes us in that true nature, in that true essence. And then we are no longer separate.
It's like
I'm sorry.
it's like we're all contaminated with the ego virus.
Yeah.
The ego virus takes over your clean cells, your clear seeing cells. It takes it over and infects it with insecurity, desire, and fear.
And it's very contagious.
It's very
That's-
contagious.
That's right. So we have to see the symptoms. What are
Right.
its symptoms? What are the symptoms of this me?
Runaway megalomania,
Misery.
runaway megalomania, and desperate insecurity. Those are the
You're in
two-
bigger boats.
Yeah,
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Bigger and bigger boats, or you know, spending time with someone who has a particularly bad case of the virus, the ego virus. It feels insufferable to be with them because nothing you do will be right. They're either going to be wounded by anything you say or something you say. They'll feel mistreated or slighted because they're so super sensitive. Or as a way of compensating for feeling so inadequate, they're going to come on as super superior and be very critical and have something caustic to say about, where did you buy that cake? Or you could have done it this way.
Right. Right.
How much did you spend for that? Oh, that was much too. Haven't you seen that play?
So this is what somebody asks Jean. Here is something which strikes me as being rather significant, and it happens every day. One does one thing while thinking about another. For instance, I often happen to put my keys down somewhere, and the next moment I can't remember where they are because I was thinking of something else, and I was not really present. Is this not a very ordinary example showing that most of the time we are not present to ourselves? And Jean says, yes, it is. We are always somewhere else, living ahead or behind in time. We long for the future or we regret the past. We are never really here. This flight in time is of great significance. If we turn away from the present, or rather, if the present is so often unable to hold our attention, it is because we conceive of it as being a known and registered reality, therefore devoid of interest or as a disappointing one. Just so long as we have not understood that true bliss is not in objects, but in us, we continue to place our hope in the future and we keep racing ahead. We thus live in a state of imbalance, bent upon and striving endlessly toward the future. What we must come to understand is that awareness in the present is the only true starting point, and that this starting point is at the same time the point of arrival.
Yeah.
I'm going to read that line again.
That's pretty profound. There's no beginning and there's no end. There's only just now.
Yes.
Wow.
What we must come to understand is that awareness in the present is the only true starting point, and that this starting point is at the same time the point of arrival. You've arrived when you are fully present, choicelessly aware in the present, choicelessly aware. Choicelessly aware of all the symptoms of this ego virus.
It has to be choiceless, because if you're choosing, it's the ego doing the choosing.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. 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 Choicelessly aware of psychological suffering. Psychological suffering is the me. And I think, don't you, that most people suffer more psychological suffering than physical suffering. That doesn't mean that people don't have true physical pain and suffering. By all means they do. But most of us suffer psychologically.
By a long shot.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Evie, isn't suffering really the pain of the pain? It's not the pain itself. It's the, well, I wish it were different, or I don't want to have this pain, or whatever. That's when suffering enters.
That's right. That's right. Refusing to accept the what is.
Yeah.
An absolute refusal to accept the what is.
Along with not knowing who you are and what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, if you keep thinking you're the ego, it's going to be hard to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
I think you really have to lay some groundwork, and the groundwork has to be that investigation of who am I and what am I, and from that, all of this can have meaning. But if you say this stuff to somebody who hasn't worked this out a little bit, it's not going to mean much. You know, it sounds nice, but
Right. Well, you know, it's interesting how he says about time. You know, I always ask the question, where do we live? Where do we actually live? And when we look at that, if we ask ourselves that question, where do I really live? I'm either living in the past or I'm living in the future. So time is a very important factor of this me. The me is time. Psychological time. I'm not talking about chronological time. Obviously, there's chronological time, but psychological time. Living in the past, projecting into the future, dwelling on the past, always trying to become something, to not being able to fully stay with who and what we are, always wanting to become something.
Well, that was Jean Klein's mantra, wasn't it, to you? To stay in the not becoming.
That's right. I asked him, if you could just tell us one thing that's most important in this study of non-duality, what would it be? And he said, stay in the not becoming. And that's
So that's like saying,
yeah.
That's like stay in the being instead of the
That's right.
going to be.
That's right. Stay in the not becoming means free yourself of this time thing, this me that's rooted in time. But in order to do that, there has to be an awareness of where you are. And that can only be in the moment.
You can only really be in the moment if you accept it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
you have to be aware of what's going on to tune into the brain, how to the thinking, to the brain. I mean, the brain is, my brain is always running. I mean, it's running all the time. And if I look at it, and when I choose to look at it, it's either running about something about the past or something about the future. And that all comes from my consciousness, which is an accumulation of knowledge. Every time I have an experience, it's recorded in the brain. That's what the brain does. It records. And then that brain there's a phenomenon that goes on there, that thinking arises from that. Thoughts arise from that, I should say. And the thoughts are the basis of thinking. And so if you understand that, like I try to, then I see that anytime I'm thinking, it's the ego doing thinking. Now, it's not a problem when I'm trying to solve some mechanical problem. That's wonderful. I mean, like I said, 2 and 2 is 4, and 4 and 4 is 8, and I don't have an argument with that. But the problem comes in, like I said, when I want a bigger boat. Now that can be a problem, and that gives me an opportunity to see how the brain functions. And absolutely, if you can stop that thinking process, then what are you left with? You're left with now. You're left with the present and some peace and quiet. Now, I don't know about bliss and I don't know about all of that, but I really enjoy just the peace and quiet when I can calm my brain down. And I see it. I mean, you can experience, you can witness it. It doesn't, I can't do it for a sustained period of time, but I get glimpses of it during the day. And so that encouraged me to come to meetings, do a little bit more investigating, and try to take some direction from what I hear and from some of the pointers that I read and you people just give me.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you.
It's interesting, you know, so at what moments during the day am I completely in the present moment? And Rogine, Jean Klein's, one of the other books he wrote is The Ease of Being. And when you're when you're completely in the present moment, there is an ease of being. So during the day, what are those moments when I'm completely in the present moment? Well, it's not when I'm shaving, because my mind can be anywhere while I'm shaving, or if I'm washing dishes, or if I'm even cooking, the mind can wander. But if I'm operating a very dangerous power tool where you really have to be focused or you'll cut your finger off, probably that's when one of the times I can think that you're completely engaged in what you're doing and the mind isn't wandering. Anybody else have an example?
Because you have to be.
Yeah, you have. There's an urgency there. But most of the things we do don't demand that kind of present, all-purpose being. The mind can wander because so many of the things we do are so conditioned and rote.
Mm-hmm.
When you
this is kind of silly, but I think I'm present if I'm eating something like that's really delicious for the first 2 bites.
Yeah.
You know, so sometimes pleasure can bring you completely into the moment briefly.
That's right. That's right.
Or when you see a thing of beauty.
Yes, absolutely. That's arresting. It's arresting.
Yeah.
Yes.
Again, short-lived though.
Well, but you see, with anything, whether you're shaving or washing dishes, you can be present.
Yeah, but it's not an activity that demands attention. I can be present, yes. I can be present shaving or washing dishes. I guess it feels
that
like
would be a choice. You would you would probably need to make the choice to be present.
Exactly, right.
Another instance that I think about, there have been times when I've been to the Met, and whatever it is, whoever's singing is just right on, and there's I can't explain it. It's just the music. There's no sense of self or anything like that, and it could last throughout that whole scene of that audio, whatever it is. I mean, I've had that experience. Art will do it, and also a nice scene. I'll be walking sometimes through my living room and I have a view of Quarry Creek, and every once in a while I just stop and I look. And the interesting thing about it is that I've been practicing, which you shouldn't do, but I'm practicing. Not trying to describe it, but just trying to see what's there, just to use seeing, no language, no words, no nothing.
Right.
And it's amazing how I've seen that scene 1,000 times, and when I do that, I see it for the first time.
That's right.
And it's amazing the detail that you see.
Yes,
And
yes,
you
yes.
can't describe it. It's just, I don't know how to describe it.
Well, it's like the door, like Aldous Huxley, the
No,
doors,
Blake,
the doors of perception
if it
have
were
been
cleansed.
cleansed. Looking, looking with a clear, unblemished seeing.
Yeah, well,
Rather than,
you take the sensor out of it, you know.
yeah.
The sensor is doing the seeing, and you cut him out of the game, and you just see.
Right.
Well, that happens when we give attention. If we're fully attentive, then there is, in that moment, there is no me. When you're fully attentive, then there is no me, and you begin to see. There's clarity in that full attention. But we tend not to really give full attention. Partial. We give partial attention. But to give our, it's so interesting, even the phrase give attention. It's like giving yourself over to that which you are perceiving. Fully.
It's true, the ego sees so little because it's just what it wants.
That's right.
But like Hugo is saying, if you don't have that, then like the whole scene is so rich. Like there's even just being in a room, like the whole relationships between all the objects and the space and the light. But the ego like just narrows things down or is not there at all.
Right.
Well, it wants to judge everything. I mean, I go through the whole day. You get in the car and, oh, look at that garbage on the thing. Oh, that road. Oh,
yeah.
What the hell's that guy trying to do? Where's the road? Everything is judgmental. And you look, boy, that's a terrible color on that house. Oh, that's nice. And this, and I see myself. I can see it all the way down the line until sometimes I just have to laugh at it and say, all right, knock it off. But it's incredible how judgmental I am. I mean, of just about everything. And that goes on most of the day until I become aware of it, and then I can ease it off. But that's part of my conditioning, I guess.
Yes.
And it does not allow you, like you're saying, it doesn't allow you to see because you already made up your mind what it is, and you don't see it. You see what the ego wants you to see.
Right.
Hugo,
yes.
You're reminding me of a couple that I worked with many years ago, and the guy, he couldn't help himself. He would, if he saw his neighbor building a fence or painting his house, he couldn't help himself from going over and saying, "Why are you doing it that way? Don't you know you should make this kind of fence?" And his wife would go crazy because she would say he goes all over the neighborhood telling everybody how they should be doing this, and it would so upset him that he would get beside himself.
Oh.
And he couldn't help himself from going around and involving himself and telling everybody how they should be living their life. And he thought that he was doing it out of the goodness of his heart, by the way. He just couldn't stand people making mistakes.
Those are the most dangerous kind, the ones that think they're doing good.
The do-gooders.
Yeah.
But it's interesting what you said, Hugo, because you see, once there is an awareness of the judgments, there's an awareness of the pettiness or the jealousies. Or once there is an awareness, you've stepped out of it. And that's really important to know and to remember.
Yeah.
You
Well,
see?
it reminds me, last week we were reading Krishnamurti, and he said, watch how you speak, how you walk, how you talk, how you eat. That there's just awareness moment by moment.
Yes. And each moment of awareness is a moment of witnessing.
Yeah.
And so you're out of it. That thing, you're out of that judgment because you've just witnessed it. There's been an awareness of it.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about you, but I'm going to keep a list this week of all my transcendent moments.
Okay.
Right.
You got enough paper?
So you're saying we all have homework.
which would of course be contrary to the whole thrust of what we were talking about. But you're making the list.
Well, but it's a list of awareness.
And I'm going to be particularly watching you.
The awareness that so many people have is the awareness of everybody else's,
That's right.
Right.
not of the self.
That's right.
It reminds me of what you said, Paul, of the guy that's going around, he's completely aware of everybody else's behavior.
Right.
And his behavior is immaculate.
Right.
That's right.
But
That's
completely unaware of his own behavior.
correct.
Right.
Correct. Well, guys, listen, we won't be meeting for 2 weeks because the holidays are coming up,
Right.
but we'll meet right after the holidays. And we wish you all a very Merry Christmas, a very Happy New Year, and a
Yes,
healthy.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
too.
The
You
same to
too.
you.
Buon Natale tutti.
Okay.
Aw, thank you, Hugo.
So we'll meet in 3 weeks then.
I think January 7th is the first Thursday.
Thursday,
after- yeah.
Oh,
That's the next meeting, January
That's
7th.
the next meeting.
okay.
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 Stay well, everybody.
Thank you so much. This is so
Oh,
wonderful.
you.
Thank
Really, such a
you.
lovely gift all of the
Thank
time.
you.
Thank
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you
Bye-bye.
all.
It is.
Bye-bye all.
Bye-bye.